notes. So it's just a general thing that you would do to point out the passages where you have imitative counterpoint going on. So what's going to happen at this transition to the C theme is that it's going to be based on the third theme. This opening theme was presented like that, incipient three-part song form. And so it's this little thematic idea that was initially, for two measures just on the key of E minor. Well, he's going to use that at the beginning for this little imitative passage between the right hand of the piano and the cello. And you'll hear it. And then it reaches a passage, that's the final passage, that is going to link to the C theme, where you have then in the bass a dominant pedal tone, a G sounding in the piano, and that prepares then this cadence on subdominant key, and then the C theme that's presented. So this is going to be the longest theme, and what we're going to do is stop when we get to this subdominant key. So we're going to pick it up with the second phrase of this A theme being restated. So here's the third phrase. Fourth phrase. Okay, so cadence is on tonic here. And now is where it's going to take this idea, and you're going to have an imitative passage, and then it leads to the passage where it's descending, and you've got all this figuration in the piano, and it has a dominant pedal tone in the bass of the piano. All right, so here's the imitation. Arrived in the key of C major, and now you're ready for the C theme. So you want to describe, what's happening, and you look at these sections, these principal themes, and also the auxiliary sections to look to see how the phrasing is organized, and then assign, a song form for the construction. That's the general technique that you'll use. Now, in the C theme, what we're going to hear is an enlarged three-part song form in which there is a written out repeat of part 2. So, when you hear part 1, right now where I stopped it, the piano has the part 1 theme. So this is the C theme. And it is stated in 2 phrases. And then the cello restates it, and the piano gives figuration against it. And so in total, you're going to hear 16 measures for part 1. Now what's going to happen with that when it comes back as part 3 and then part 5 is that it won't have the whole 16 measures. It'll just have the first 8 measures. And also, when we hear part 2, that is something which also is 8 measures in length. So it's just this opening part 1 that you hear that's 16 measures long. But by writing out that restatement of part 2, it lengthens this theme in comparison to the other themes. And that's something that gives that sense of balance, with the middle section being the longest. You have ABA on this side, ABA on this side, and then the C theme, which is the longest in the middle, and then you have a longer coda at the end. But let's listen to the way this C theme is organized. So here we are with the part 1, first 2 phrases in the piano, and then the cello restates it. Here's the second phrase. Cello. So they had an authentic cadence. You heard at the end of the second phrase when the piano was stating the opening of the theme that it was a half cadence at the end of the second phrase. But now when the cello then picks it up and it's, you know, a parallel double period, then that fourth phrase then changes what is basically a restatement of the second phrase, but instead of half cadence, it gives you an authentic cadence. That's not unusual, but you know, you're listening for things like that. Okay, so now here is part 2. Second phrase, part 2. So you had an extra 2 measures there for part 2. You had 4 measure phrase and then a 6 measure phrase, and it extends it by repeating the last 2 measures. So this now has stopped it at the return of the opening material, so that equals part 3. And now it's not going to give you all 16 measures, it's just going to give you the last 8 measures. So that's the end of C theme. So in total, you have an enlarged 3-part song form. Now what he's going to do is to take the opening of the A theme and he's going to prefigure the return of the A theme. And so he's going to give you just the first 3 notes, the bum bum, those 3 notes, and he's going to present it then in 16th notes in diminution. So you want to point out terms like that too, where you have contrapuntal development techniques that are being used. So he just takes that little motive, that 3-note motive, and you're going to hear it presented as it, you know, originally is stated at the beginning of the A theme, and then you'll hear it in diminution. And then you're going to hear it modulate, and then it's going to lead to a statement that sounds like it's the return of the A theme, but it's not in the right key. So you don't want to identify that as the return of the A theme. You want to wait again until it gets to the key of G major. And so that is one of the, you know, basic ideas of tonal form, is that it's based on a harmonic plan, and you're always, you know, fitting what you hear into that expected plan. And sometimes it, you know, it might not, you know, bring it back in the key that you expect. That could happen, and it does happen. But you always want to listen for the expected keys, and when they come, if they do come back, then you identify that as a return of the theme. So, but this has a place where the theme is presented in D flat. It's a great modulation when it finally gets back to the home key and return of the opening theme. It's one of my favorite spots in the movement, but he's really kind of building up your expectation of that rondo theme coming back. Okay, so here we have a little imitated place where it uses diminution based on the first 3 notes of the A theme. So it brings back the whole thing, you know, he ornaments it But now you're looking to see, okay, does this bring back that same material? And yes, it does. You'll hear where he gives you an extra measure, or extra two measures that then don't lead to the modulation to the dominant, but instead are going to, lead you to a cadence on tonic. That's where it's different. So right there is a return. So that'd be a place I would look at to see, okay, did you label it that way in the first time you heard the B theme when it was in D major, and now have you identified it as returning that in G major? So that's one place you're always, looking to be consistent. Okay, so it's going to be presented the same way. It's going to come back in 5 phrases, and then it's going to shift to G minor. We'll have a retransition, same basic procedure that you heard the first time. It's going to lead to a restatement of the A theme, and then it doesn't give you the whole A theme this last time. It just gives you 2 phrases, and then it leads to the coda. So we're going to hear all of this now the B theme, and then I'll stop when we get to the coda. Second phrase, half cadence. Third phrase, cello bouncing. Fourth phrase, this has an extra measure. Here's the extra measure. Okay, retransition, goes to G minor. On tonic, and that is then all he brings back that last time. So this is abbreviated. These have all been a full return of that incipient 3-part song form. So, all right, now what's going to happen is a coda, and basically you're just going to hear a lot of, at the beginning of the coda, 5-1 kind of patterns. It's based on the A theme, but then it's going to modulate, and that's not unusual for Beethoven to have kind of a development like passage in the coda. He continues to discuss his themes, and this is really a pretty extended coda, even with an early work like this. So here's the beginning of the coda. It's going to modulate. Okay, so it shifted to E flat. Now, right here, you can hear the whole A theme. First phrase. Second phrase. So that is kind of the end of the big, first bigger section of the coda, which, you basically had kind of 3 parts to, the opening part where it was just, discussing the A theme and tonic, and then it modulates to E flat, and you've got, scale figuration. That's something that's, kind of contrasting section, and then it restates the whole A theme, just the most embellished of all, leads to a real clear cadence on tonic, and now you're going to have this final section. This final section is a little bit more lyrical. You get a lyrical theme of the cello, and it has a brilliant conclusion. example, a 7-part rondo, and is one that is a good representative of early Beethoven, and he is already expanding, these forms, and for sure these are important works for the cello, because he's really treating the cello as a solo instrument as compared to its role, in the continuo from the Baroque and earlier classical works. So it's a good example here of just basic analysis technique.